Welcome to another episode of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio. Episode number 102. That's right, 102 episodes of Peace, Love, Liberty Radio under my belt, or at the end of today, they will be under my belt. So, if you listened to episode 101, then you know that there's a new format. And if you didn't, well, you're hearing the new format now for the first time. So what I've done is, instead of having the show be a 2-hour live show on Sundays, it's now going to be a 30-minute podcast that I record several times during the week. So for now, I'm recording Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the show will be up by about 3 o'clock in the afternoon so that you can download to your RSS or just find the show at fppradio.com. So it's a live record, meaning that if I pause for like half a second or if I say something stupid, it's staying in the show. So you're not really going to notice anything different other than it's a shorter show, and I'm trying to sort of introduce a couple of new things. One of those new things is the Ask Me Anything that I will be doing every Wednesday, or at least that's the plan, is to do an AMA every Wednesday. So if you have questions that you want in the AMA, you can either email those questions to me at ama@fppradio.com, or you can leave a comment. I'll post a thread on the Facebook and the Twitter, probably by early week, like Monday. But definitely, feel free to send your questions anytime. But I'll put out a reminder that I'm doing the AMA. You can leave your questions in the comments there, or you can email. Again, ama@fppradio.com. So I've got several interesting questions this week. The first is, what is AMA? Well, AMA, Ask Me Anything. The next question, and this is sort of a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about a 7-part question. So I'm just going to read the entire thing and then dissect each part of the question. The person writes, I know I could wiki this, but why is Washington, D.C. called the District of Columbia? What does it have to do with Columbus? Why is it a district as opposed to a state? And why is the White House in a district? And what is a district as opposed to a state? So the first question here is, why is Washington, D.C. called the District of Columbia? Well, the simple answer, and I'm going off the top of my head, trying to remember what I learned in, like junior high and high school. The simple answer is because they wanted to name it after Columbus. So this sort of ties in with the second part of the question here. Because Columbus, there's the myth that Columbus discovered the New World and blah, 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 and it was named after Amerigo Vespucci, who is actually the first explorer to realize that Columbus didn't actually find a shorter route to India, that Columbus, quote-unquote, discovered a new landmass that was already being inhabited by possibly millions of people. We don't really know how many people were here, but possibly in the millions. So it was one of those things to where they wanted to honor the person that supposedly discovered the landmass that the new country was being placed on. They also wanted to honor the first president under the current Constitution. And yes, there was a Constitution before the current one. George Washington was the first president under this Constitution. So they wanted to honor him and Columbus as well. So the official name of the city is Washington, and it's in the District of Columbia. And at one time, before I believe it was 1871, there was Washington and Georgetown that were two different cities in the District of Columbia. They were then merged to become all of Washington. So it became, just Washington as the city in the District of Columbia. Why is it a district? Well, the easy answer, again, is because, the Constitution says that the new federal capital would be located in a district to be created, so it's not part of a state. And that sort of answers the next part of why is it a district as opposed to a state. And it's because, the piece of paper, actually it's some sort of parchment, the thing that was written down said that the capital would be in a district that would not be part of a state, and it would not actually be a state. And I think the reason behind that was because they didn't really want to be seen as picking a favorite state, where, some countries, the capital city is part of a territory or part of a province or a state or whatever sort of name they use for their regions, and that is sort of seen as the favored state. And the founders didn't want to do that. They didn't want to have the capital be part of, an existing entity, so they took land from Maryland and Virginia. Ultimately, the land from Virginia was given back, retroceded to the state of Virginia, and what is now Washington, D.C. is solely land that originally belonged to the state of Maryland. Now, I'm not getting into the whole thing of, whether states can rightfully own land or not. I'm just explaining how the District of Columbia came about and why it's called the District of Columbia, why it's not a state. The next question, why is the White House in a district? Again, it's because the U.S. Constitution specified that there would be a seat of government that would be created that would not be part of a state. Now, the final question here from this questioner says, what is a district as opposed to a state? A district is very much like a territory, in that there's not much local autonomy. Now, of course, Puerto Rico has some level of autonomy, and Puerto Rico's different than all the other districts. But the other districts, so Guam and the Virgin Islands, they're two of the more populous. I forget the other ones off the top of my head, but their territories, they don't have much local autonomy, meaning that, and it's not exactly the same for them as Washington, D.C., but they have federal oversight, meaning that the federal government can tell them any of their laws that they pass, no, you can't do that. So, for instance, the recent cannabis decriminalization, legalization referendum that passed in Washington, D.C., and I don't want to call it legalization, although that's really what it is. It's true legalization. What was passed does not set up an infrastructure for taxing and regulating cannabis like what happened in Colorado and Washington a couple of years ago, and like what just passed in Oregon and Alaska. But the true legalization, meaning that, for less than 2 ounces, there were no laws on the books, or that's what was being passed, was to say that there's not going to be laws on the books for less than 2 ounces. You can't get arrested. You can't get a ticket. Well, the U.S. Congress is now saying that they might wind up preventing that from going into effect because Washington, D.C. is under direct federal oversight, meaning that the Congress can overturn any law. And that's different from, say, New Hampshire, to where, yet the federal government could overturn, but only if it's challenged and winds up going to the Supreme Court. or another federal court. We'll be back. I've got one other AMA question that I'll get to in just a moment. Bitcoin Not Bombs is a launching pad for nonprofits and social entrepreneurs into the financial freedom of the Bitcoin economy. Bitcoin Not Bombs offers premium publicity campaigns designed to facilitate an organization's adoption of Bitcoin as a payment system. Bitcoin Not Bombs is fully committed to being the hub of the nonprofit sector of the Bitcoin economy, maximizing the potential cross-promotion of all our clients and commercial partners. To learn more, visit bitcoinnotbombs.com. Hi, I'm Darryl W. Perry, and I need your help to take Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on the road. In the spirit of Motorhome Diaries and Liberty on Tour, I intend to take the message of peace, love, and liberty on the road. I intend to leave New Hampshire at the conclusion of the New Hampshire Liberty Forum and return at the beginning of PorcFest. During the 104-day trip, I'll be visiting at least 10 cities across the country, speaking to people about the ideas of peace, love, and liberty, while continuing to produce daily Liberty media. Pensacola, Florida, Austin, Texas, Sedona, Arizona, and Denver, Colorado are already on the map. If you have a college group, a local Liberty on the Rocks, or other Liberty meetup that you'd like me to visit, you can possibly add your event to my calendar. To find out more about the tour or to donate, visit tour.fppradio.com. That's tour.fppradio.com. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. So I'll get back to the AMA in just a second, but first I want to make sure that I tell you about Roberts & Roberts Brokerage. For over 35 years, Roberts & Roberts Brokerage has been a trusted source for buying and selling your investment-grade precious metals. They now take Bitcoin for purchasing precious metals so you can turn your profits into a long-term, stable investment. Call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on investing. 800-874-9760. That's 800-874-9760. So the other question that I got this week for AMA is a little more difficult, and I really don't have the answer to it, but let me pull that up real quick. The question was asked, why are some people manipulative, liars, and egomaniacs? And, you know, I wish I had the answer, but you know, there's all kinds of studies into various personality types and why some people act the way they do. And, you know, I really wish that I had a better answer. But let me just say this before I go into the news that I have, because I do want to attempt to provide an answer, is some people, They have very fragile egos, so they try to build themselves up by tearing other people down because, you know, maybe it's something that they learned. There's always the question of nature versus nurture, and I don't know if it's a learned habit necessarily. It could be. It could be something that is, you know, deeply ingrained in their genetics. Or maybe it's a combination of the two. I wish I had a better answer to that question, but unfortunately, I don't. You know, maybe one day somebody will wind up doing, you know, further research to fully explain why some people are egomaniacs and lie and cheat and steal and just try to destroy others. But, you know, for the time being, heck, for all I know, the research is out there. I just haven't stumbled across it. And admittedly, I didn't prepare as much for answering that question as I should have. But, you know, again, that's not really my forte. Like, you know, I'm not a psychologist. But I will attempt to answer any questions. So if you have questions for the AMA for next week, ama@fppradio.com. So here's an interesting news story from New Hampshire. It's actually from the town of Seabrook, and the headline is Union Wants Seabrook Chief Fired for Calling Off SWAT Team to De-Escalate Standoff with Distressed Man. Yes, you heard that right. The police union is mad, and they are calling for the chief of police to be fired because he de-escalated a situation and did not use the SWAT team to go in and kill someone. The article is from the New Hampshire Union Leader, and it says, a director of the union representing Seabrook police officers called Tuesday for the resignation of Seabrook Police Chief Lee Botomsky. I'm not really sure how you pronounce the name, so I'm just going to refer to him as the police chief. Writing in a letter to town manager Bill Monzi that the police chief was a, quote, liability to the town, end quote, following his actions in a 10-hour standoff with an armed man on November 4th. Stephen Arnold, the New Hampshire State Director of the New England Police Benevolent Association, alleged that the police chief put officers and nearby residents at risk by ordering an emergency response team to clear the area outside a mobile home of David Nasser during the overnight standoff. Arnold wrote that Nasser was a known felon, had put a loaded gun to his own head and threatened to kill himself, and then smashed items inside his home after a gambling loss, but eventually was able to leave without the knowledge of police after the two remaining officers left the scene early on November 5th. Nasser left his home with his pastor and made his way to the police station, where officers were then advised that the pastor and suspect were in a vehicle in front of the police headquarters. Seabrook Police Department staff said Nasser remains in custody on $250,000 bail, facing felony charges of criminal mischief, reckless conduct, and felon in possession of a dangerous weapon. A probable cause hearing is scheduled for November 19th. The letter from Arnold says the union feels that the chief of police needs to be relieved of duty immediately to protect the rights and safety of the officers and citizens, as well as to protect the town of Seabrook from potential and further liability. And then the article here goes on to explain exactly what happened in the situation on November 4th. But before I get into that, it just strikes me as odd that the police union is upset that a situation was de-escalated. And there's been some problems in Seabrook that this article will get into, but just keep in mind that, this is the police union that is not happy about a de-escalation. This isn't some random guy that says the police should have gone in there and blown his effing head off. This is the police union that's mad that the police chief de-escalated a situation. The article here continues. It says police were called to the home, and then it gives the address in Seabrook at about 9:30 p.m. on November 4th. Nasser repeatedly refused to exit and continued to smash things inside the mobile home owned by his father. Arnold wrote that a Seacoast Emergency Response Team, or SERT, basically it's a SWAT team, so I'm just going to refer to it as the SWAT team instead of calling it the CERT. It's a SWAT team. And yes, I know SWAT team is redundant because the T stands for team, but nonetheless, Arnold wrote that the SWAT team was called to the home and established a perimeter, but was later ordered to leave the area along with all but 2 patrol officers. And I will explain what happened next when we come back on Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. PLL.com. Hi, I'm Darryl W. Perry, and I need your help to take Peace, Love, Liberty Radio on the road. In the spirit of Motorhome Diaries and Liberty on Tour, I intend to take the message of peace, love, and liberty on the road. I intend to leave New Hampshire at the conclusion of the New Hampshire Liberty Forum and return at the beginning of PorcFest. During the 104-day trip, I'll be visiting at least 10 cities across the country, speaking to people about the ideas of peace, love, and liberty, while continuing to produce daily Liberty media. Pensacola, Florida, Austin, Texas, Sedona, Arizona, and Denver, Colorado are already on the map. If you have a college group, a local Liberty on the Rocks, or other Liberty meetup that you'd like me to visit, you can possibly add your event to my calendar. To find out more about the tour or to donate, visit tour.fppradio.com. That's tour.fppradio.com. ExpressCoin is the best choice for buying Bitcoin, Litecoin, Dogecoin, and more. ExpressCoin prides themselves on their customer service, so much so that the back end on the website should allow them to be even more focused on your needs. Get your cryptocurrencies with money order, check, wire transfer, or cash deposit. Get started at expresscoin.fppradio.com. That's expresscoin.fppradio.com. Welcome back to Peace, Love, Liberty Radio, online at fppradio.com. Before I finish with the story about why the police union is upset with the Seabrook police chief, I want to make sure that I tell you about a good deal that you can get on websites and website domain registration from Namecheap. You can head over to namecheap.fppradio.com, and if you use the discount code Turkey Day, then you will wind up getting a discount from Namecheap. That discount will be good for 20% off shared hosting, and you also get special pricing on transfer and registration of popular top-level domains, those being .com, .net, .org, .info, and .biz, B-I-Z.biz. Again, coupon code Turkey Day, and you can use my affiliate link, namecheap.fppradio.com. So the article here from the union leader about what's going on in Seabrook and why the police union is not happy continues. It says, those two officers eventually were called back to the police station. Arnold wrote, quote, leaving a violently armed felon free with inadequate information supplied to the neighbors. Seabrook police later told media that the withdrawal decision was intended to reduce tension outside Nasser's home. Deputy Chief Mike Gallagher, for example, told the Portsmouth Herald last week that the decision was not to show a huge presence around the residents, or rather that the decision not to show a huge presence around the residents made a huge difference, especially considering the person's history. Gallagher could not be reached yesterday for further comment, nor could the police chief. However, Arnold, that's the guy from the police union, said that withdrawing the SWAT team was a serious error, saying, quote, the chief of police placed officers and residents alike in grave jeopardy by dismissing over a dozen highly trained officers and replacing them with 2 patrol units, while an armed felon with known violent tendencies continued on his delusional rampage. And before I continue, let me just sort of bring you back to something that was mentioned early in this article, that the armed man, Mr. Nasser, arrived at the police station with his preacher, meaning that somehow the preacher was able to go talk to this guy. Now, the article doesn't say whether or not the police chief was the one that brought in the preacher as sort of a hostage negotiator sort of role, or how the preacher actually wound up on the scene. But the police union guy, he completely leaves that out. Doesn't mention that the preacher was on the scene. Doesn't mention that, the preacher, obviously, if the guy's going to leave his house with the preacher and then go to the police station, he trusts the guy to some level. So it would make sense, especially if this guy is a quote-unquote, known person within the Seabrook Police Department, that the police chief would know who, this guy's preacher is, and then call the guy, or know who knows this guy the best, get a hold of that person, have them come in and try to talk him down. And that seems to be what happened. But the police union isn't happy. The article here continues by referencing someone whose last name is Manzi, and I'm not seeing that name earlier in the article. Said that Manzi said Tuesday that he didn't yet have a response to Arnold's letter. Oh, I believe Manzi is the town manager, I believe. Let me scroll back up a little bit here. Bill Manzi is the town manager for Seabrook. So Manzi said that he did not yet have a response for Arnold and the allegations it contained, saying, quote, "They dropped it off late yesterday, and I'm still digesting it. We'll have to evaluate it. I'll probably have something more to say at a later time." Manzi said he and the town's Board of Selectmen will look into the allegations, but he needs some time to review it and do some fact-checking. Arnold, again, that's the guy that's the police union guy, says that the accounts of the standoff police reported in local media last week contained inaccurate spin and disregarded the risk of the police chief's decision. The clear defense of this incident will be that no one got hurt and that the matter ended peacefully. I am certain that the chief will take full credit for the outcome of this incident. However, I submit to you that this incident could have ended horribly and violently. This suspect should never have been allowed to roam free between his residence and the police facility. The SWAT team should have been allowed to do their jobs and secure the arrest of the suspect and secure the firearm possessed by him. And now this is where it gets into what else has happened in Seabrook. But first, let me respond to what Arnold says. I submit that this incident could have ended horribly and violently. Yes, it could have. And that's most likely what would have happened had the SWAT team stayed. It most likely would have ended horribly and violently, and with Mr. Nasser probably dead. And I think that's what a lot of SWAT teams want, because they know dead men tell no tales. There was an incident in New Hampshire where a SWAT team raided the wrong house. A grandmother wound up getting shot by police, and the New Hampshire Attorney General said there was nothing foul about what happened. It was an honest mistake. Nobody's getting charged. So the article here from the union leader says it's been a thorny year for the Seabrook police. The union issued a no-confidence vote against the police chief in June. In July, Seabrook town officials announced that 2 officers had been fired, a third had been suspended for 2 days without pay, and a supervisory lieutenant had been demoted, all related to the use of excessive force by officers in November 2009 after the arrest of Michael Bergeron, who was then 19. And if you've not seen this video, it is completely horrible, and I don't recommend that you watch it unless you are prepared to see some pretty violent police abuse on a 19-year-old kid. And yes, I'm calling him a kid because in the video he looks like a kid. Again, remember, next Wednesday, AMA at fppradio.com. Find me again on Friday, fpbradio.com.